Peace, family, and welcome to another episode of Underground Railroad Radio. I wanted to today we got Blue Pill on the line today, and peace, Blue. We're gonna have a short show, y'all, but I wanted to just holler at the family. I've been getting a lot of emails and questions, Blue Pill, on what was all the talk about the blood moon. You know, some people look at it as, you know, just spookism, being useless. Some people looked at it as a strong period in the history of of what's going on, and something that was very important as far as manifestation purposes. And you hear references of the Bible and it being biblical and prophetic, and you speak on this law of 44 a lot. So could
Indeed.
you please, just to start out with, Blue, what was the significance of April? I guess it's April 4th for this blood moon. I guess it was also eclipse. What was the significance of this, Blue?
Okay, this particular blood moon is the third in the tetrad, all right? And this tetrad only happens in 500-year increments, and which makes this tetrad so special. And before I continue, let me explain what a tetrad is. A tetrad is a series of 4 lunar eclipses, okay? And these particular lunar eclipses are what are called red moons, and blood moons for that matter. And the blood moon is, of course, when the moon turns red during an eclipse. It appears like it's bleeding. And of course, a lot of people, will look towards that and say that those are ominous signs, and what have you. And the Jews in particular found this particular tetrad as a sign from, from beyond or from the divine, because this tetrad, for the first time in 500 years, fell on 4 Jewish holidays, all right? And those were Passover, Feast of Tabernacles, and again, on the 4th, which Passover again, and then it will end on the Feast of Tabernacles on the 28th of September. So the first one was April 15th, the second one was October 8th, okay, and the third one is April 4th, and which made this particular moon so special and it caught everyone's attention. It's the shortest eclipse of the century, and it also lasted for 4 minutes and 44 seconds, congruently in line with what I call is the law of 44. Now, what is the law of 44? It's the way that I utilize a algorithm, what I have detected by doing my research and found out that the universe runs off of an algorithm just like a computer. We love saying that this is the matrix. We love saying that, this is a holographic computerized dimension and all of these things, but, very rarely do people bring evidence forth, you know what I'm saying? Very rarely do people point to signs, and I'm not talking about stuff that's in text from 15,000, 3,000, even 500 years ago. What about the now? What about, current evidence up to the minute, the now? You feel me? So I have my finger on the pulse of this algorithm, and it's moving in the now. It's calculating, How else can you explain something that's landing on April 4th, which is 4/4, lasting 4 minutes and 44 seconds, the third in the tetrad? So this has a lot of rabbis and what have you going crazy, because not only do they see the significance, because they're looking in their scripture and they're saying that the scripture speaks of the time of revelation, and these are the signals that will signal the coming of a Messiah and an Armageddon and all of that thing. So irregardless of what somebody's faith and their belief is, I know enough to have respect for somebody who does have a particular faith and belief in that, you know what I'm saying? Because I know that even if they're not on the money, it still signals a very significant time, a time of change and upheaval. And during this particular cosmological pairing that we're in, we're dealing with Uranus and Pluto energy, you know what I'm saying? So that's change, that's revolutionary change. And what the rabbis are looking at is they're looking at the 44th president, and they're looking at the deals being made with Iran. They're looking at the political scope of, what's going on in the Middle East, and they're looking at a lot of other factors, and that's what they're seeing from their side of the discussion. Where I see it from my side is totally different. You feel me? But it's not irrespective of some of those factors as well. I think that Obama is a key factor. I have a three-king pantheon in my system of the Law of 44, which I look at, social occurrences through the lens of three individuals. I call them the three kings. One of them is Martin Luther King, who came in with I Have a Dream. The second one is the King of New York, Biggie Smalls, who came in the game with It Was All a Dream, kicking in the door, waving his 4-4. And then there's the third king, Barack Hussein Obama. Of course, we know Hussein means king. We know Obama is a Leo. That's a king, so he's the king of kings. And they call him the leader of the free world, regardless of that's an assignment or, a figurehead position. We're talking mythos. The fucking world lives in the mythos, whether they want to admit it or not. People are running around on Easter talking about, Easter eggs laying, bunnies laying Easter eggs and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? People talking about, they celebrating the resurrection after 3 days and Christ died on Friday, according to their scriptures. So people go for any fucking thing out here. They need to cut it out. All right? And they need to stretch their imagination a little bit, because there are things that are happening by way of the skies that you can't necessarily rearrange. Like somebody could tell me I'm crazy. Somebody could tell me, I'm stunting and I'm making this up. But what are you going to attribute to these moons lasting 4 minutes and 44 seconds? And they concluded on the 44th minute of the hour. So if you was in Hawaii, it was like 3:44. If you was in New York, it was 9:44. And anywhere else you was at, around the fucking world, is ending on this particular minute. So the universe is speaking a universal language. I'm one to believe that, according to the narrative and scripture, they said that the Tower of Babel is when the confusion set in and people started speaking in tongues, right? And communication and all of these things started getting thrown off because we was using words and language. But the universal language is mathematics. It's always been that. 2 + 2 is the same, equivalent anywhere you go on the planet. So if there was a divine source, if there was something that was penetrating, trying to communicate to us, wouldn't it universally speak to mathematics? Didn't we get raised in the streets of New York to adhere to what we understood to be Allah's mathematics? So, I recognize patterns, and I respect the language of numbers. So the Law of 44 is live and direct. And, I'll leave it at that. Let you ask the next question and I'll follow up.
In the past interviews, I've, me and yourself have talked about not thinking linear no more, and not needing something to be yes or no or right and wrong or black and white. There's gray areas to everything, and with this 4-4, I've seen everybody talking about the conspiracy theories of the Final Four, NCAA Final Four, and how it was set up for this team to win and this person to score this amount of points. He was 22, and it was this big conspiracy to align cosmologically with what was going on. But I just want to say real quick, Blue.
Yeah.
But my question is, Blue, even if it is a conspiracy, isn't it still isn't the people operating the conspiracy, isn't it still an assignment from the universe for them to do what they got to do? So at the end of the day, isn't it still the universe operating through these powers? That's their assignment. It's
still somebody admonishing a mathematical principle that will render them a result, right? That will give them the advantage in whatever game they're playing, right? This world is a chessboard. Everybody's playing chess. You know what I'm saying? The grand architect is a chess player. And on the other side of the chessboard is that dude in the ski mask that we talk about so often, right? So that's the grand chess game that we're talking about. God is actually playing himself. Who can he actually be playing if we want to, cater to, a notion that there's this one supreme force? So even if these people are utilizing conspiracy, my thing is, even if they can utilize conspiracy, that makes even the Law of 44 even more proficient, because it's something that you niggas don't know that you need to get on, because your adversaries is utilizing this, you know, in the open, broadly in the open for everybody to see. Now, let's take a look at the game, okay? Wisconsin is located on the 44 latitude line, right? Utilizing the science of gematria, which is deducing a word into a number. Follow me, family. So there's different ways that you can arrive at that conclusion. They have Jewish gematria, which is through the Kabbalah, right? Which is you're taking words and you're turning them to their Hebrew equivalent. Now, each letter in the Hebrew language has a mathematical equivalent, all right? Or there is Pythagorean gematria, where you assign the letters the number 6. So A would be 6, B would be 12, all right? C would be 18. And then you have simple gematria, which is assigning the letters their alphabetical numerical frequency. A is 1, B is 2, C is 3. And then there are other people that have their own systems of gematria, like there's a gentleman named Marty Leeds, and he has a gematria system where he breaks the 26 letters of the alphabet up into a 44 system. He breaks them up to 2 systems of 13, okay? So is that like A to M, N to Z, you know? So, you know, it's 13 on one column, 13 on the other, and you're able to see which words connect and coincide with the frequencies of one another, all right? So take Obama, for instance. He ran on a campaign of, you know, hope to become the 44th president. Hope, when you add it up in gematria, equals 44, okay? So there's all of these telltale signs for somebody that's doing the research and sitting back, you know, and doing the knowledge to this information. It's like, yo, there's a game being played right in front of our face that we can't see, because let alone us having, you know, we fail to understand one another using the tongue. We don't even understand that the language is a codex, and there's math behind the language that's being spoken on these grand stages. So Wisconsin is 44, all right? It's located on the 44 parallel, all right? It equals 44. Number 44, their player, right, Frank the Tank, his birthday was on April 4th. He turned 22, you know what I'm saying? And there was 44s all throughout the game. They closed the game out with 144 left by hitting the 3-point. You can't arrange shit like that. Like, they're giving these people too much credit. That's what I'm saying. I sit back and I laugh, because it's just people that fail to realize that there's something going on that they don't understand. So the first thing they do is a conspiracy theory. And the last thing they're going to do is be like, oh, that nigga Blue Pill is a legend. You feel me? Right. So they'd rather be like, oh, this is a conspiracy, irregardless of how much you tell them and show them. You know, I spoke about Frank the Tank or Kinski or whatever his name is a few days before the game even happened. So as Minister Jew talks about, you know what I mean, the wave and the particle is really based on the observer. You know what I'm saying? We are creating these events. I know that I'm influencing them, you know. So this was 44 acts as a mirror. This was a mirror game of last year's game when they played Kentucky, who also has a 44 player. This dude is from Brooklyn. You know what I'm saying? And last year's game was won by the Twins. This game was played on a Saturday, April 6th, I believe, you know. And this was the same day that Jay-Z was courtside at the Nets with the 5% chain on, and he set a whole fury off, and that controversy led to the whole 44 rituals of last year's first blood moon, which happened on April 15th. You know, right after the first blood moon, that's when the Don Sterling situation happened, right, which started this repetitive cycle of them tearing down a melanated man in public, you know what I'm saying? Right. And it ended with what? Yeah, with Jay-Z getting his image torn down. And that last year, he was 44 when he got shit smacked out of him in the elevator with Solange. He got humbled. He got sat down. So even this week, when he comes out with his announcement for Tidal is nothing more than tidal wave. The color that they used was blue, you know, and tidal wave, or wave, stands for Aquarian, you know. And when you go into Aquarian, of course, in gematria, the number is 44, just like Aries is, you know what I'm saying, the month that we're in. You know, so, I mean, all of these, like I said, is signs. These are beautiful signs of a beautiful language that the universe speaks. I don't really partake in you know, conspiracy theories. I don't give people that much credit. You feel me? I watch these games just like everybody else does. You tell me that these people are rehearsing behind the scenes on some ballerina shit, that when the clock gets like this, you hit a three and they run this way. Like, come on, these are college kids. For real? You giving them credit like that? I don't think so. You feel me? I don't think so. I think this is people's failure to see the bigger picture, you know? Right, that there's just something going on that they don't understand.
Definitely.
You know? Surprise, surprise.
When we deal with this occult knowledge that you speak of, whether it be the Kamala, geometria, dealing with numbers, astrology, so on and so forth, where does it become evil? What's the difference between good magic? Because, people automatically get scared. They see the symbols of ancient Egypt, the so-called third eye, which is the pineal gland, which is in your head. They see the they see the Star of David.
Right, which is life, which is phallus and the birth canal bringing forth life.
Right.
We understand. Yes.
They see the jewelry you wear. And I've seen people post questions on YouTube, isn't that evil to think you wore a pentagram or something? But when does it become evil? When does it become good? Who decides whether this is evil and this is Illuminati shit, or whether this is ancient knowledge, Blue?
Who decides? I mean, obviously, it's based on you making that sole decision. If you leave the decision up to people that have limited information, they're going to make decisions or judgments based on limited information. Again, a person is only going to shit what they've been fed. So especially if they came up in the church, they've been indoctrinated to look at certain symbols and make associations, right, that they're differentiating one thing to say this is good and this is evil. You know what I mean? They're seeing a pyramid, oh, that's evil. Why? Because it's associated with Egypt. You understand? Right. When that could be the most retarded thing ever, So people are making, they're drawing the line in the sand and they're making a distinction. My thing is better than yours. Your thing is no good. That's like little kids in the sand park. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't partake in those conversations, but I do understand how people fall into that stuff. They look at my rings. Oh, are those evil? It's quartz. Like quartz is in your body. Quartz is in everything. Quartz is in computers. Quartz is in a watch. You feel me? It's an element outside of the earth, millions of years old, to contain all of the information of this planet. How can it be evil? You know what I'm saying? So we understand that a lot of these particular symbols are ways that energy is contained. A pentagram is how you contain a particular energy. A pyramid is how you contain a particular energy. A box is how you contain a particular energy. So the people that understand this science have utilized this science to not only contain that energy, but utilize it for what their intents are. And the intent behind their thing might be unfavorable to some people to say, oh, that's quote unquote evil. You know what I mean? Because they might be on the opposite side of what the results are. So they see that as evil. And I think that, energy is energy. It's always up for grabs.
Right.
Yeah. It's always up for grabs. But the people that understand power in this world, they understand that everybody has their back turned, and they'd rather talk about conspiracy theorists. They'd rather talk about X, Y, and Z. Nobody wants to get with the program. So why not utilize it for what they want to utilize it for? Why not domesticate? You can utilize the number 44 to domesticate, right? The 1% can domesticate the 99%. That's how you control. So it might be a foreign concept. People might not like or understand the concept of that, but you're not going to unconvince somebody, to see the benefits of that from doing it.
What happens now, Blue, with all of these blood moons and what just happened, on April 4th? Where do we go from here? Like, how does this affect us internally at this point?
Well, we should know personally, where these planets sit at in our charts. You know what I'm saying? We should know where our Aries sit. We should know where our Libras sit. We should know what planets in our chart sit at 14 degrees, which is where the moon came in at, because that's where we'll be personally affected. Now, moons and eclipses in particular cast shadows, and these shadows last anywhere from 3 months to, 30 years. You feel me? So these blood moons are hitting one another. And like I said, they're coinciding at the same time with all of these planetary alignments, Uranus and Aries, Uranus and Pluto, Scorpio and Saturn, Saturn moving into Sagittarius. So it can't be, I can't say in particular when one thing is going to happen. There's a number of things happening. You know what I'm saying? We saw what happened under last year's blood moons. It was very Aries. It was very militaristic. You know what I'm saying? What we call martial energy. You know what I'm saying? Right? That martial law, that military, the police force, aggression. You know what I'm saying? Melanated boys getting killed in the streets and what have you. Them edging a sense of revolution, but it never really manifested and coming to the surface. You know what I'm saying? They was just shitting on black men all year long, and we see the results and the repercussions of that. So we're going to have more of that energy manifesting coming into this year. We're going to see some things. We're going to see a lot of aggressive tactics towards the 44th president. You feel me? We might possibly see something very tragic, and that's how they're shaping this thing up.
There's a famous quote, I think it's Shakespeare said, we are all actors in a play called Life. Was that Shakespeare?
It very well may have been.
Oh, I'm not sure who it was, but, you heard people say that, this is a movie with all actors in this play called Life. What does God get out of all of this happening? Whether it's the joy or whether it's the anarchy, whether it's the light, whether it's the dark, whether you're white, so-called black, whether, so-called man, so-called woman, what does God get out of this whole play or this whole movie that we call life?
Like you said, it's a play, it's a movie, and it's a movement of energy, you know what I'm saying? And God has to manifest through these experiences. He has to know himself. And the only way he's going to know himself is by moving these pieces on the board, and moving this energy. And the energy has to, it has to coincide with what the planets are doing and how the planets are moving. Because who holds the planets in place if they believe in the God? You know what I'm saying? Is God only God on Earth? Or is God on Saturn? You know what I'm saying? Is he God of the solar system, only this part of the universe, or the entire universe?
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's a very far-reaching concept once you think about it. You know what I'm saying? God got hella duties. He got hella shit to do.
Right.
You feel me? Not only, real talk. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's one hell of a mind where he has to keep all planets in orbits and everything in motion, and they're telling you it's billions of planets in the galaxy. You feel me?
Wow, yeah.
So, he got to micromanage to some extent. And if he sets the planets in motion and they're responsible for, creating certain energies and the way that people respond to those energies, you know what I'm saying, determines the outcome, how the next move comes into play, and how that particular play affects other things. So everything's affecting the next thing because there's no separation. We all live in a bubble, right? And that bubble is like an ocean of water. Even though we can't see it, we're surrounded by this mist of air, and this air is water. So when you make a move, when you make a motion, when you make a thought, when you make a decision, that is creating ripples and waves. You know what I'm saying?
Wow. Yeah.
Those waves are overlapping other people's waves, and they're affecting them as well. And the planets are sending waves down, and those are hitting you. You know what I'm saying? You're having transits and squares. The moon is affecting the waters in your body. You feel me? All of these things are taking place. So, I really would advise the people to just really get in contact with who they are. Look into your charts, man. The charts don't lie. They say men lie, women lie, numbers don't. I want to remix that and say, men lie, women lie. Numbers can be skewed, but the skies don't lie. Feel me? Sky don't lie. You know, sky don't lie. So we have some amazing astrologers in our community, you know what I'm saying, or cosmologists. You know, one of them that I refer to, you know, to get a lot of my insight is the brother REUPLOADED, cosmophysician, you know what I'm saying? And through his information, you know, I'm able to see these things. I'm able to plan for them. You know what I mean? I'm able to tighten up my own particular eye. You know, me in particular, I'm a Scorpio, you know, which is governed by Mars, which is Aries, which is 44. And my ascendant is also Aries, you know, which is Aries in my face, Mars in my face. So I have 44 in my face, in my eye. That's why I see it so much. So this is just who I am. And then I'm a twin, so that's doubled because my brother has the same, you know, particular planetary assignments as well. You feel me? So I'm just being true to who I am and saying, look, I was designed and fashioned this way to have this interaction and interplay with this particular number and to resonate with this particular number the way that I do. And the fact that I've claimed it so much, you know, it's become part of my life and I'm able to affect it. You know, I'm collapsing it. So I want people to get in contact with themselves as well. I want people to start tapping into their thing. You know, like KT said on the show with Eileen, if it's 64 codons and we only using 20 and the other 44 is the RNA, that's where your superpowers lie. Wake that shit up. You know what I'm saying? Get into it. Start doing dynamic, out of this world things, out of the box stuff. Make people scratch their heads. You know, be extraordinary.
Right. I think one of the misconceptions when you deal with this type of information or knowledge, and when you deal with the occult and the study of the cosmos and the behavior that's happening in the stars, the difference between how they viewed it in ancient times and how they view it now. The ancients viewed it as a holographic projection of what was going on inside of them. But today we look at it as, fuck, I'm studying Mars for. That shit is a zillion miles away. I don't give a damn about, you know, the average person looks at it as the moon. Nigga, I ain't worried about the moon. It's out there. But it's really in there.
Yeah.
But when your eyes trick you and tell you it's out there, but that's part of the whole play, this thing, the sensory thing going on. We look at it as out there, but it's really in here. So if you could just real quick, and I know you went over this before, the fact that the universe, we think it's out there, but it's really internal. Could you just go over that real quick as far as the moon and, you know, you're dealing with this Mars energy and everything? Because I think if people realize that it's really in there, then they would appreciate it more.
I mean, you know, as was mentioned on the last show that we did, you know, we can simply just cut to the chase and explain that you are the universe. You know what I'm saying? All of the materials that are contained outside that you're looking at in the stars and the skies are inside of you. That's what you're comprised of. You're made of stardust. You know what I'm saying? You're made of all of these elementals. Okay? You're made of all of the minerals that come out of the ground. So you're not only what's comprised of in the stars, you're comprised of what's under your feet. You know? This is what makes you who you are. But at the time of your birth, there was a planetary arrangement in the sky, and all of that energy that was hitting you at the time of your birth, you know, is who you are. That makes up who you are. And every day, you know, there's a motion of the planets that pretty much change, and those changes are going to dictate how you change. You know what I'm saying? They're going to dictate when your opportunities are best available. You know what I'm saying? They're going to dictate where your powers and your weaknesses are. So it's important that we get back in contact with this information, because we have always been the people who were guided by the system, by these stars. You know what I'm saying? And they said that, you know, astrology is not something that millionaires use, it's something that billionaires use. You know, so even if our people is only solely into materialism and paper chasing, you got to understand this is what the big boys refer to. You know what I'm saying? This is what they doing on Wall Street. You better believe they're not just randomly, you know, going up in there and setting up IPOs and making key trades and shit like that. They're consulting their astrologists. They're consulting the stars. You know, all of the presidents had them. All of the kings got them. Why? But the peasants don't want this information, then you're going to remain a peasant. You know, you're always going to be subject to chance. Whereas you can have a handle on things. You can find out who your babies are, you know what I'm saying, and what their roles are, so you can make available for them what they need, give them the best available environment, you know what I'm saying, for the success in their life. You know, don't be selfish, even if you don't want to do it for yourself. Reach out and find out who your child is, you know.
Indeed.
So.
Indeed, I definitely you took this concept of know thyself to definitely to another level, and definitely understanding our multidimensional nature. I appreciate it. I know you got something to take care of, but just give me contact if what'd you say?
Yeah, you know, yesterday, or should I say, because I don't know when it's coming out, but April 4th, while the game was being played, you know, while the eclipse was occurring, we were doing a webinar, all right? And the webinar was dealing with the Law of 44. It's called the Theorem of Everything. And I actually went in for 8 hours. It was scheduled for 4 hours. I went in for 8 hours, from 4 to 12. So that'll be available to the family. I get a lot more in depth. You know what I'm saying? I show and prove 1,000,000 times over what this energy is about. I show the evidence unanimously for it, you know what I'm saying? And I give that, you know, those suggestions that you're speaking about. What can people possibly do, and, you know, what do they have forward to look out for, and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, there's another blood moon coming in at the end of September. At that time, I'm going to be releasing a book where I catalog all of the events that took place under this blood moon. Because, you know, we just lightly touched on it tonight, but I track it. You know, I track event by event by event and just show you the build-up and just show you the evidence. You know what I'm saying? In the World Trade Center, we live in a post-9/11 world. It's very important, you know, sans all of the conspiracy. Move them shits aside. I will show you unanimously how they utilize the number 44 in that particular ritual. You know what I'm saying? So in this post-9/11 world that everybody's saying is holographic and it's the Matrix, you know, let's bring forth the evidence and the proof so you know what you're dealing with. And I want to see how people individually approach it from that point. Because, you know, our people are like children, and I'm not saying that as a diss. I'm saying if you give a child something, like some electronics, they're going to figure this shit out. They're going to figure out how to get in there, you know what I'm saying, how to work it, things of that nature. And I look at our people as the same way. You're going to give them something, they're going to get in there, and they're going to make it their own. They're going to remix it. They're going to come up with additional information. They're going to tweak it. They're going to flip it. So I have full faith in our collective university of intellect, you know what I'm saying? I have full faith in the people out there. Some lovely people that get in contact with me from this program that I run into in the street. I've run into nothing but beautiful energy. So I have full faith in the family. Thank you for taking your time out to hear us out, you know, with tonight's presentation. And I look forward to continuing this conversation with you because it means a lot to me. So I appreciate it.
No, I can hear it in your voice, the passion. I could definitely hear it. So, you know, the people ain't going to hear this one. They're going to feel it. And that takes it to, that touches your subconscious. When you just don't hear nothing, you feel it. So I appreciate it, man. And on that note, this brother Rich, Underground Railroad with the Blue Pill, Law 44. Holler at that brother.
Law44.com. Yeah. Holler at us. We got it set up. All right. Salute.
And we signing out. We see y'all next time. Peace.
Peace.